As I look back over the past 100 years, I see a heroic story. A story of good, hardworking, imaginative people, an exuberant people who built our country with their optimism and their prayers. A story of immigrants who dared to dream of what their lives and their children's lives might someday become. A story of a land where even a boy from a small town in Arkansas could hope to one day, someday, help make those people's dreams come true. I spent my first few years in Hope, being raised by my grandparents, my great uncle, my great aunt, and the other members of my extended family. My father died 3 months before I was born, and my mother went to New Orleans to study nursing in order to give me a better life. There was no television back then, and nobody took vacations, so everyone's entertainment was just conversation. I grew up with storytellers, good ones. I really feel that I owe my family and my extended family a lot, not only for the values and the love and the caring they gave me, but for the passionate interest that they helped me develop in all kinds of people, in their problems and their promise.
Well, it's one for the money, two for the show. Get ready now, go, cat, go.
It was in high school that my interest in music flourished, and I became passionate about playing the saxophone. But despite all the happiness music brought me, I also fell in love with the idea of public service. And in the end, I had to come to grips with the fact that I loved politics even more, and I thought I could do it better. Growing up in Arkansas in the 50s and 60s shaped my later political views in several ways. First of all, when I was a little boy hanging around my grandfather's store, I became aware of his commitment to treating everyone the same, whether they had money or not and whatever their race was. I was only 10 years old when I realized not everyone shared those ideals. When the Little Rock Central High School crisis broke, every person in Arkansas had to take sides.
My poor little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
I was home in Arkansas, in Hot Springs, listening as Martin Luther King told us of his dream that one day the children of former slaves and the children of former slave owners would sit down together at the table of brotherhood. That speech remains the greatest political speech of my lifetime, the clearest clarion call for the more perfect union of America in the 21st century. But after I heard it, my commitment to civil rights and equal opportunity for all Americans was deeper than it had ever been, and it stayed with me for a lifetime.
Yes, the magic of a singing grows.
I was really blessed by the educational opportunities I had starting with college. I think they had a lot to do with whatever success I had later in life. I also met a lot of lifetime friends when I was at Georgetown, when I was at Oxford, when I was at Yale. Of course, the most important friend I made was Hillary. We met in the law library one night at Yale. We've been together ever since. It was a lucky night when she put her book down and walked across the library and said, since I've been staring at her, we at least ought to know each other's names. I'm glad she made that trip. After graduation, most of my classmates headed off for new frontiers, but I always knew I wanted to go back home. I decided to run for Congress in 1974. We made a good race, we got awfully close, and it was the beginning of a successful political life for me at home. The next year I went back to teaching, and Hillary and I were married. In 1976 I ran for and was elected Attorney General. 2 years later, I became the country's youngest governor. I was very, very good at doing what I wanted to do, but not so very good at listening to other people about what they wanted to do or how they wanted it done. And so I was defeated in 1980, becoming the youngest ex-governor in American history. I remember one day an old man in overalls looked at me and said, you know, I cost you 11 votes in the last election. He said, me, my wife, my 2 boys, their wives, and 5 of my friends, we all voted against you. And I asked him why. He said, well, I just had to. You raised my car license. So I laughed and I said, well, let me ask you something, mister. If I were to run again, would you consider voting for me? He said, sure I would. I said, why? He said, because we're even now. I laughed and ran to the payphone and called Hillary and said, I think we got a chance. And sure enough, we did. I have been given something that few people get in life, a second chance to serve. That night marked the beginning of 4 more terms as governor. I was determined to improve Arkansas and to lay the foundation for a better future, not just for my own daughter, but for all the children growing up there. During my tenure, we overhauled the entire educational system, became first in national job growth, and kicked the door wide open for minorities and women to be full partners in our state government. I'll always be grateful that I had a chance to serve as governor. I loved every day of it. I still think about it all the time. And most important, I think that the people of our state were better when I stopped than when I started.
Today, I proudly announce my candidacy for President of the United States of America.
On October the 3rd, 1991, I entered the race for president. I was running nearly last in the polls at the time. We faced an unprecedented economic and social situation at home and a new world abroad: terror, weapons of mass destruction, racial, religious, ethnic conflicts. I determined to run because I thought I understood where America was at this moment in history. I offered the American people a new direction. We no longer can have a country where I worry about me, you worry about you, and they worry about them.
We've got to be one country again, going up or down, together again.
Clinton was nominated as the candidate of the Democratic Party for president by acclamation.
It was a campaign on fire. The American people knew we had to change. They knew we needed to have new ideas, new direction, something that would work for all people and give everybody a chance to live their dreams.
When the history of this campaign is written, they may say, well, Bill Clinton took a lot of hits in this campaign. But I want you to know something. The hits that I took in this election are nothing compared to the hits that the people in this state and this country are taking every day of their lives.
We knew pretty early on election night in 1992 that I had won. Hillary and I went up and said a prayer and asked for God's guidance in the work that was ahead. Then we went out on the stage at the old State House.
Let us all join in welcoming the next president.
It was an astonishing moment. I felt like the luckiest person in the world. I saw my mother's happy face. I hope my father was smiling down on me from heaven.
On this day, with high hopes and brave hearts, in massive numbers, the American people have voted to make a new beginning. Thomas Jefferson believed that to preserve the very foundations of our nation, we would need dramatic change from time to time. Well, my fellow Americans, this is our time.
President Clinton has not stepped away from the American dream.
Because we have acted, millions of children will be able to get medicine and see doctors for the first time. We cut crime with 100,000 community police and the Brady Law. Because of our determination, millions of young Americans will be able to go on to college. We have built a new economy. The lowest unemployment rates in 30 years, the lowest poverty rates in 20 years, with over 20 million new jobs. My fellow Americans, the state of our union is the strongest it has ever been. From Belfast to Jerusalem, our administration helped Catholics and Protestants, and Jews and Arabs walk the streets of their cities with less fear of bombs and violence. In Kosovo, we brought down one of the most brutal dictators of the century without losing a single American life.
It is time for us to say that it is no longer acceptable to discuss women's rights as separate from human rights.
During my travels as president, I was touched by America's ability to fire the imagination, lift the hopes, and stiffen the spines of freedom-loving people everywhere.
I've had the privilege of being a friend of presidents since late President Eisenhower. But on the subject of peace, I have never known someone with your dedication, clear-headedness, focus, and determination.
Few leaders of the United States have such a feeling for the position of the black people and the minorities and the disabled in this country. History will record that few have worked more tirelessly or more effectively than the President of the United States to prevent the breakdown of the peace process. You should have seen the way he was received by the General Assembly of the United Nations. The applause was spontaneous and overwhelming.
If you look at the American economy, you look at the respect with which America is held right around the world today. If you look at the standing and authority of the president, it's a pretty impressive record for anyone.
That is the man, my friend, who I respect so much.
While my chapter in the White House is now a part of history, America's story is still unfolding. It's a dazzling, brave, improbable story. And each of us is blessed to have played our part in it. Hillary, Chelsea, and I are as awed today by the majesty of America as we were the very first day we arrived in the White House. It's been an interesting, exhilarating, challenging, sometimes fun, and always rewarding journey. One that began in a place called Hope and led us not only to peace, but to the longest period of prosperity in the life of our country. I'm humbled by our people's greatness, and perhaps even more important, by your goodness. We have been a most fortunate and deeply blessed nation. To be alive at this moment in America is both an honor and a responsibility we all share. As I look to the future, I see America leading the world toward a global community of shared prosperity, shared responsibilities, and respect for our common humanity.
Vice President votes yes.
In the Senate, Vice President Gore broke the tie, and the Clinton plan went on to create the longest economic expansion in American history.
These assault weapons from our street that have no purpose other than to kill. Today we can say America is serious about education.
America cares about the future of every child in America will lead the world in the 21st century because we're going to make sure you will be there on the front lines living up to the fullest.
A majority in both houses of Congress. One of the president's most outspoken critics is now the Speaker of the House. Newt Gingrich advocated for agriculture and impacts in areas such as health, education,
This is a historic day for this country. It is the day on which so much change in so many ways in so short a time.
This march in Helsinki, President Yeltsin and I agreed that despite our differences over NATO enlargement, it's the relationship between the United States and Russia and the benefits of all of cooperation between NATO
for everyone receiving federal medical benefits.
We are proving we can make these rights real now for nearly 90 million Americans.
The White House Millennium Project that has honored the past and imagined the future all across our country.
It is the eternal destiny of America. The fastest economic growth in 30 years, the lowest unemployment rates in 30 years, the lowest poverty rates in 20 years, and next month, America will achieve the longest period of economic growth in our entire history.
The president's philosophy on welfare was a philosophy that said we're going to foster independence.
We are successful empowerment zones and community development banks. We're helping people to find jobs, to start businesses. And with tax incentives for companies, they clean up their things.
Very important things for our future generations. Today, the world is joining us to celebrate the completion of the first survey of the entire human genome. Without a doubt, this is the most important, most wondrous map ever produced.
In their attempt to get Bill Clinton, they have at least lost one speaker and one speaker to
ratify as well.
Serbian troops launched a campaign to have Today, our armed forces joined at the 2000 Democratic National Convention. President Clinton reflected on the peace and prosperity of
Very hard, for example, on the borders dispute between Peru and Ecuador. He's helped to resolve the matter in a way that is mutually agreed.
Best evidence that our strategy was working, besides the crime statistics, was the unbelievable renaissance of America's cities in the building. I know, right? Blossom.